Which of these stories will you be talking about tomorrow? General David Petraeus urges a Florida church to reconsider. Let's burn some Korans on 9/11 to show them how much better we are than they are.
We have firmly made up our mind, but at the same time, we are definitely praying about it.
Even the rumor that it might take place, Petraeus writes, has sparked demonstrations, such as the one that took place in Kabul yesterday. The general on the ground in Afghanistan speaks. Why aren't the right-wing politicians listening to him and echoing his concern? The silence of the Republicans.
Good evening from New York. During the Iraq War, Republican politicians told Americans that dissent would encourage attacks on U.S. troops abroad, that images of American torture at Abu Ghraib would inflame anti-American sentiment, and that Democrats should heed the words of General David Petraeus. Tonight, in our fifth story, General David Petraeus, now the coalition commander in Afghanistan, says that a planned Koran burning this Saturday will encourage attacks on U.S. troops abroad, and that images of the Koran burning will inflame anti-American sentiment. So where are those Republican politicians now? Petraeus' remarks followed a protest yesterday in Kabul. Afghan protesters chanting death to America, to throwing rocks at passing U.S. military convoys, until the leaders of the rally told them to stop doing so. Petraeus then gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal about the Koran burning and gave almost identical comments to other media as well. To quote him, "It could endanger the troops and it could endanger the overall effort in Afghanistan. It is precisely the kind of action the Taliban uses and could cause significant problems. Not just here, but everywhere in the world we are engaged with the Islamic community. Were the actual burning to take place, the safety of our soldiers and civilians would be put in jeopardy and accomplishment of the mission would be made more difficult. Images of the burning of a Koran would undoubtedly be used by extremists in Afghanistan and around the world to inflame public opinion and incite violence. Such images could in fact be used, as were the photos from Abu Ghraib, and this would again put our troops and civilians in jeopardy and undermine our efforts to accomplish the critical mission here in Afghanistan." The U.S. commander in charge of training did nothing to discourage the notion that the Pentagon is of one mind on this issue.
Their very actions will, in fact, jeopardize the safety of the young men and women who are serving in uniform over here, and also undermine the very mission that we're trying to accomplish. And again, we very much feel that this can jeopardize the safety of our men and women that are serving over here.
Last night, Terry Jones, the mastermind behind this 21st century book burning, said military concerns would not stop him.
Is it something that discourages you from doing this? Do you care?
I don't believe it's something that's going to stop us. I mean, of course we care. It would be tragical if because of this, one person died. But at the same time, we do not feel responsible for that.
Tragical, he said. This morning, Jones said he would not listen to the generals and stop the September 11th book burning, but he might listen to his God.
We are actually very, very concerned, of course, and we are taking the general's words very, very serious. We are continuing to pray about the action on September the 11th. We are indeed very concerned about it. It's just that we don't know. I mean, how long do we back down?
So you're saying that you might
stop backing down?
You might well not go through with this? You're saying that you're praying about it. You may not burn the Koran on September 11th?
I'm saying that we are definitely praying about it. Well, we have firmly made up our mind, but at the same time, we are definitely praying about it.
There are currently 100,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. This is the bloodiest year of that war. The current strategy is counterinsurgency, winning hearts and minds. And so today, Countdown asked several Republican politicians if they now, as they have in the past, urge Americans to listen to General Petraeus and support what he needs to win the hearts and minds of an Islamic country. Senate candidate Marco Rubio, in whose state the book burning is planned, recently lost his father and is not replying to media inquiries at the moment. A spokesperson for President George W. Listen to the General's Bush replied with a no comment. And among other Republicans who claim to support the troops, total silence today. From Sarah Palin, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, House Leader John Boehner, House Whip Eric Cantor, Senator John McCain, et al. With us tonight for some comment, Todd Bowers, the Deputy Executive Director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and Staff Sergeant in the Marines, who has served in Afghanistan and 2 tours in Iraq. Great thanks for your service and your time tonight, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Very unusual, generals sounding out on the topic of domestic news. Why do you think he did it?
I'll tell you why he did it, because this is going to have an impact to the men and women on the ground in Afghanistan. Making comments from a general like General Petraeus about something like this highlights to everybody that this is extremely urgent. We have got to deal with this and make sure that the men and women on the ground are ultimately safe. It's not necessarily a political issue. It is just an issue that all Americans need to embrace, that we are putting them in danger by allowing actions like this to happen. And I hope that the Reverend recognizes that.
This is, in your opinion, a very practical issue. This is not, well, we shouldn't be covering this because it's giving attention to somebody who's off sort of on the deep end and was trying to get publicity for his own cause, or is somehow trying to backlash against people who he sees as an enemy. This is a practical thing with which you have essentially practical experience of your own firsthand.
Yes, last year, less than a year ago, I was in Afghanistan, where the Taliban and insurgents in Afghanistan used the same sort of tactic, burning of Qurans, defacing of mosques, and pitting it against American soldiers to put them in danger.
Blaming you and the people with which you served for
sir.
burning Qurans, and then what would happen?
Yes, sir. Then we would have a backlash. All of the work to get to know the local nationals, the leadership, would all of a sudden be completely trumped because we were dealing with this propaganda campaign that the Taliban and the insurgents had used against us. It was intolerable. It was awful because the morale just plummets for the men and women on the ground when they work so hard at something and then it all goes away in a flash.
All right, let's stipulate, ugly as it may be, that the same kind of religious freedoms that say to us, the backers of Park 51 project in New York, they are entitled to build that Islamic Center 2 blocks from Ground Zero. That gives Mr. Jones the right to burn those Korans. But practically speaking, given your experience on the issue of burning Korans and having Americans blamed for it, how do you go about winning the hearts and minds of Afghan people or other Muslim nations who agree with the U.S. government, in this case, that this is a bad idea, but who disagree with the American right to do it anyway?
I think the biggest piece to highlight is that this is a very small few of Americans that are taking part in this tactic. And most importantly, when I served over there, I served with many American Muslims in uniform, fully decorated individuals who are proud of their service, proud of the work they do over there, and they are the ones that are ultimately being highly insulted by this happening. It's absolutely awful. What
do the troops, all of them, the Muslim American troops and others, want to hear from their positions on the ground in Afghanistan, from U.S. politicians in general, in response to General Petraeus' remarks?
I hope that they will support General Petraeus' remarks and basically say, look, this is not America. This sort of sentiment, these freedoms that we're given, we all have a moral responsibility to ensure that whatever we're doing, we're supporting the men and women in uniform on the ground. So with these freedoms, we are responsible, we are mature, and we make wise decisions by the way we use these freedoms.
What if the silence from Palin and McConnell and Boehner and former President Bush and the others, what if that's honest? In other words, what if the protesters in Kabul are actually right about this, that America really is becoming more and more anti-Islamic, and this is another instance of this?
I think the big piece of that is that this isn't a political issue, that it's not left or right, it's not a donkey, it's not an elephant, it's about the men and women on the ground and ensuring their safety. And those here on U.S. soil need to understand that their actions will have impacts to those men and women on the ground, and ultimately their families. There's a lot of representation here in the United States of America that has a family member, a loved one over there that is going to be put in danger because of these actions. So it comes down to a moral responsibility as a nation as a whole.
Staff Sergeant Todd Bowers, Deputy Executive Director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Again, thank you for your service, and again, thank you for coming in. A unique perspective, and I think we've learned a lot from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For the